Hello, Willard. Thank you. And on Close Up this morning, the budget. It's compromise time again in Washington now. And it has passed a new version of the deficit reduction bill, a version that's still got to be worked out with the House. In the meantime, it does appear that the government will not shut down, since the president indicates he'll sign a stopgap measure to keep the country funded. But what's the final budget likely to be? Two men who'll be part of the negotiations are in our Washington newsroom this morning. House Speaker Tom Foley, Democrat of Washington, and House Minority Leader Bob Michel, Republican of Illinois. Gentlemen, good morning. Thanks for being with us.
Good morning.
The two versions agree on many points, but as Henry Champ pointed out just a moment ago, the big differences lie on taxing the wealthy and increasing the gasoline tax. Where do you think the final budget agreement is going to come down on those two key points? Mr. Speaker?
Well, the president keeps insisting that he's opposed to any increases in tax rates, and particularly opposed, apparently, to any increase on the rates of the highest income Americans. The House bill does not raise income tax rates on average Americans. It does raise on incomes over $200,000 and a surcharge on taxable income over $1 million. It seems to me that those elements in our economic community could pay more. I hope that the final version will have some additional responsibility in that direction and not have a bill that puts too much burden on the middle income class.
Well, it appears that the president may be vacillating once again on the tax question. There's a blurb in the Wall Street Journal this morning that quotes administration officials as saying he could well agree to a 31% income tax rate for upper income Americans. Is that good enough for the House?
Well, we'll have to see what the president's willing to do before I'll be able to comment on that. I really think that the basic income tax rate should be 33% for those over $200,000, and I think a small surcharge on those over $1 million of taxable incomes is absolutely justified.
Congressman Michel?
Well, there was an onerous provision in the House-passed bill that had to do with delaying indexing for every American's taxes up until $1 million. Now, that touches every American, and we fought hard for that principle back in '81. We'd like to hold on to that. Obviously, too, we'd like to hold on to keeping marginal rates where they are, because the minute you start tampering with them, then, of course, the next year it can be raised again. We feel strongly about that particular principle. The difference in the gas tax, I think it ought to be pointed out, and Mr. Foley, of course, would agree that when we were first talking about that, in May and June, July, we didn't have the problem in the Middle East. We were talking about a broad-based energy tax, but things have changed since then. But people do have all kinds of objections over the 9-cent or 10-cent increase now, although they've had much more than that at the pump as a result of our problem in the Middle East.
In the meantime, the president's apparent agreement to go ahead and sign a continuing resolution has bought not only himself, but you on the Hill some time. Is it going to be enough to work out an agreement?
I think so. By the way, I very strongly opposed the shutting down of the government 2 weeks ago. There was no necessity for that. It doesn't provide any assistance to the process of negotiation and inconveniences millions of Americans and threatens federal workers. If the president is willing to sign the authority that the House passed last night and the Senate will pass today through next Wednesday, it will be a positive step. We don't need another shutdown. It has no justification.
What about the frustration of the American people? They have seen this process go on for months. The president's own popularity has dropped more than 20 points, and I dare say the cynicism level about Congress has probably gone up as much.
Well, we have the problem. This is a difficult process. We're going for the biggest reduction in the deficit in our history, $40 billion in the first year and $500 billion over 5 years. It involves some increased burden sharing throughout the entire economy. We hope it would be mostly tilted to the higher income groups and not to the middle class in the Democratic version. But it will involve some additional effort on all but the most disadvantaged elements in our community. And the other problem, of course, is that some restrictions on services will have to be part of this package. It's not pleasant, not what people want to do, but it's necessary.
We truly are out of time, but Congressman Michel, I just want to ask you quickly, do you think the final agreement will be fair?
Well, I'm sure it will. If the president signs it, it'll be a fair one. If it isn't, he won't sign it.
Congressman Michel, Speaker Foley, we wish you luck today and through the weekend. I know it's going to be busy for you. In just a moment, Bryant looks at the incredible success of Disney and the company. First, this is Today on NBC.
It's been just 5 years since the Walt Disney Company was taken over by a new management team. Now, as a result, Mickey Mouse not only has a star on Hollywood Boulevard, he's also a star on Wall Street. His corporate masters have made the Disney Company an international purveyor of what's been called a unique synthetic experience.
When you wish upon a star.
Once upon a time, not so very long ago, the Magic Kingdom had fallen on hard times. King Walter had passed away, and corporate raiders were storming the battlements. But just when all seemed lost, a couple of financial knights and wizards swooped in to save Minnie and Mickey and Bambi and all their pals. Frank Wells and Michael Eisner had survived the jousts and other corporate fiefdoms and had prospered. Now they dreamed of awakening this sleeping beauty of a company and making Mickey one very rich mouse.
And your reward shall be 1 million golden Pazuzas.
1 million golden Pazuzas turned out to be over $5 billion. That's what the Disney Company will gross this year after riding a crest through the booming 80s. Analysts say the secret to Disney's phenomenal growth has been a mix of hard-driving, aggressive creativity, maximized resources, and great timing. Chief Executive Officer Michael Eisner.
Well, the country was ready for, in the 80s, for entertainment. The economy was booming. People had a lot of disposable income. We got real lucky with movies. We even made a Disney movie, Little Mermaid, that was a smash. And home video came into being. We made more money on the release on video of The Little Mermaid than the entire corporation made, including all of its parks and its worldwide operations in 1984, in one home video.
1984 was the last of the pre-Eisner years. After taking over, he built the company on 3 bases: the movies, the theme parks, and the consumer products division, and managed to sustain record annual growth without falling into some of the familiar traps of the last decade.
We did not screw up in the 80s. We did not have to go out and buy the CBS television network. We didn't have to go out and buy Viacom. We didn't have to go buy 20 television stations. We kind of tied ourselves to the mast like Odysseus and said, no, we're not going to go and be on the front page and be a buyer. So we didn't put on and pile on a lot of debt. We are very cash rich, as you would say. We're ready to take advantage of opportunities, and thank God we restrained ourselves.
Eisner did not restrain his team from exploiting Disney's traditional assets. The movie division was a break-even operation in 1984. This year, so far, it's number 1 in box office totals. By almost doubling ticket prices at its theme parks, the company has created in just 5 years a cash monster. Total theme park revenues last year, $2.5 billion. And the fastest growing division is now consumer products. There are 73 Disney stores. Wow. And now there's even a prototype Mickey's Kitchen in Southern California.
We need 2 jumbo Dumbo burgers.
For meat eaters, there's a Goofy burger. For vegetarians, a Mickey burger. And for everybody, French fries, stamped out in the shape of a well-known mouse.
I've seen little kids, 6 months old, a year old, 2 years old, see that image, those 2 round ears and that round head, and they go berserk.
Recently, more than just kids are going berserk over Mickey. As Disney has grown, their theme park crowds have created serious problems for nearby communities, particularly in and around Orlando, Florida. That city is now the #1 destination for foreign travelers, ahead of Los Angeles, ahead of New York. Residents love all the business, but hate all the congestion. One possible solution to Orlando's jammed traffic is a proposed high-tech train called Maglev. The original plans projected a 300-mile-an-hour dash from the airport to Disney's Epcot Center. But when other Orlando tourist businesses push for an intermediate stop, Disney's enthusiasm seemed to wane. Now the train's future is in doubt. Disney's hard-nosed attitude irritates people like Dick Batchelor, a business consultant and lobbyist.
What I'm saying is that Disney needs to come to the table and be part of the solution. This is not Toontown, and you can't animate solutions to these very difficult problems.
Ironically, if gas prices continue to ratchet up and the recession deepens, Orlando may be facing a very different problem, one of diminished crowds.
Oh, I worry about that. I think the big problem is availability. If gas is available, either to airlines or to cars, even though it's more expensive, I think people will pay it to be entertained. If they have to wait in line, or they don't think they can get it, and they can get caught in, with no gas in Philadelphia or in Savannah or someplace on the way down the coast, I think then we'll get hurt.
Even so, if that happens, all businesses will be hurting. And Disney, with little debt, a lot of cash, and a secure base, should be able to ride it out in the Magic Kingdom and live happily ever after. This is Today on NBC. Back now, 7:25 on a Friday morning. Deborah?
Hiya.
You up there? How you
I'm
doing?
Here, I'm fine.
Yeah, have you spent much time down here?
I haven't been to Disney World in, a long, long time. I was at Epcot maybe 8 years ago. I'd love to come.
Yeah, I continue to be amazed at how much this place seems to grow. I come down here, not with a great deal of regularity, but certainly at least once a year and maybe twice a year. And every time I come down, it seems something is new and bigger about the place. Last night I came in and I find out they've got a whole new terminal at the airport. You ought to see this place.
I've been through the Orlando airport, and they've
no, the new one.
Yeah, exactly. I was in Orlando working on the documentary about 2 months ago, and I came to the new airport, and it's not even finished. There's even more that hasn't been opened yet. Or at least hadn't 2 months ago. Maybe that's the part you were in. But it's like 3 times the size it used to be. And Orlando now has almost as many international flights coming in as Atlanta or something like that. It's close to becoming one of the major international airports in the country. I forget what the numbers are.
Yeah, and we were talking about just then in that train that they want to have, they originally had running between the airport and Epcot Center. It was on the design board, and then when town folk wanted to make some extra stops or whatever, it kind of fell off the drawing board. But this place is amazing. The last time, I guess last year we were here, 2 years ago or something like that, they had this water theme park, and now I find out that one's gone, and they've got 2 new ones in its place. This place is growing by leaps and bounds.
Do the kids have a favorite that they like to go to?
I don't know. It's kind of funny to watch over the years. Watch their taste change. When they were real young, not that they're old now, but when they were real young, they just like coming to the Magic Kingdom. And they just like riding the rides and everything else. And now as they're getting to the point where their brain cells actually function for more than 5 seconds at a time, they actually think Epcot Center is a better attraction. And the Gumble family split. My wife prefers the Disney Studios. So.
Have you been to MGM yet?
No, I never have. I went there in a working capacity. Oh, hi, Faye. I went there in
She was late, Bryant. We'll go ahead and be honest. When the cat's away, the mouse will play. She wasn't here on time. 2 demerits for Miss Daniels.
No, I went there in a working capacity last year and just did a little bit of something, but I really haven't. That too many youngsters may have noticed, but the Disney stable of characters is now turning into a gray power enclave. Mickey Mouse turns 62 next month, and earlier this year, Donald Duck hit 50.
We're gonna go down.
We're back at 7:30 here in the Magic Kingdom of Disney World, an otherworldly kind of place, not totally unlike the world of politics, especially as concerns the character of Goofy. Today, national political correspondent Catherine Couric in this half hour is going to have a look at the governor's race here in Florida in just a few moments, one in which a millionaire is campaigning against big money and a former Democrat is the Republican incumbent. If you're confused, stick around. Katie will clear it up. Let's get back to New York right now. Deborah Norville has a look at what else is ahead, Deb.
Okie doke, Bryant. In just a few minutes, we'll be talking with a former official of the KGB. Oleg Gordievsky made big news when he defected to the West about 5 years ago, and he is making big news again. He's published a book about KGB operations, and among other things, he names the man whom he believes to have been the fifth man. Also coming up this morning, Gene Shalit will be talking with Jeremy Irons. He's playing Klaus von Bülow in a new movie that's coming out called Reversal of Fortune. First, though, at about 7:31, Faith Daniels has a look at the news and the crisis on the budget in Washington.
You betcha. Thanks, Deborah. Congress will be back at it today, trying to turn two budget agreements into one. During the night, the Senate passed its version, one that differs sharply from the one passed by the House. The Senate plan would double the federal tax on gasoline to 18 cents a gallon. It would limit itemized deductions for people earning more than $100,000 a year, but it does not touch tax rates. Now it's up to a conference committee to work out the differences. Earlier on today, House Speaker Tom Foley told Deborah there are tough choices ahead.
It involves some increased burden sharing throughout the entire economy. We hope it would be mostly tilted to the higher income groups and not to the middle class in the Democratic version. But it will involve some additional effort on all but the most disadvantaged elements in our community. And the other problem, of course, is that some restrictions on services will have to be part of this package. It's not pleasant, not what people want to do, but it's necessary.
Congress will now try to beat the midnight deadline for coming up with a final budget package. But the White House says the president may sign another temporary spending measure to keep the government in business if Congress is making real progress on the budget. In Moscow, the Soviet parliament this morning gave its basic approval to switching to a market economy. Not decided yet is how soon the switch will take place. President Bush will get a briefing on the Persian Gulf crisis from the Soviet perspective this morning. He'll meet with Soviet advisor Yevgeny Primakov, who met with officials in Baghdad earlier this month. Utility crews are still working to restore power from Virginia to New England after some violent weather on Thursday. Tornadoes broke windows, down trees, and tore off rooftops. One man in Virginia was killed. Dozens of people outside Baltimore were hurt. Stormy weather also hit Washington, D.C., triggering a leak and a flood at the U.S. Capitol. Statues in the Capitol Rotunda had to put on a plastic overcoat. Charles Keating, the former head of the failed Linking Savings and Loan, is out of jail this morning for the first time in a month. During the night, Keating was released from the Los Angeles County Jail after his family posted bond. Hours earlier, a judge had lowered bond from $5 million to $300,000. Keating is awaiting trial on fraud charges. It's Game 3 of the World Series tonight in Oakland, with the Reds leading the A's 2-0. Tom Browning will be on the mound for Cincinnati, Mike Moore for Oakland. And in Thursday night football, it was Miami beating New England. Dolphins down the Patriots 17-10 to improve to 5-1 on the season. The Patriots, having a rough year, fell to 1-5. It is coming up on 7:34. Time now for Willard and the weather in Florida.
This morning's weather brought to you by Maxwell House Coffee. Always good to the last drop.
Hey, Bill and I just knocked off 2 gallons of that Maxwell House coffee. That is just #1 then, #1 now. One of the nicest ladies in the whole wide world. When I was Bozo the Clown, I used to go over to her house when her little children were just little kids. And Art Buckwall rode an elephant, and I was out there. Well, but naturally for Democrats, what do you think they're going to ride, right? They're going to ride the Republicans. They're still doing it. But anyway, Ethel Kennedy sent this, a great T-shirt, this weekend in Hyannis. They're having a golf tournament, the Robert F. Kennedy, a golf tournament for the humanities. So you check that out and have a good time. Hope the weather holds for you. Hope it's the best in the business. A couple of birthdays to take a look, if you will, this morning. We're in Maitland, Florida, where the Rotary Club is doing its thing, and Sylvia Updike's in Craig, Colorado. She is 100 years old doing her thing. That is a pretty lady. Happy birthday to you. And Nels Berger of Williston, North Dakota. I'm telling you, those Norwegians and Danes and Swedes live forever. 105 years old today. Happy birthday. And I'm telling you, look, Bill, he looks better than you do, that guy. And he's 105. You're only what? You're 72 now, aren't you?
I was 28 when I started this.
That's right. Waiting for this interview. Yeah. Saturday's outlook. Look for some showers in the nation's midsection and the upper plain states, and also some snow flurries in the northern Rockies and the northern plains. That rain will be moving its way. That's that Pacific storm that moved ashore yesterday, with a lot of rain in the Mississippi Valley, but mostly sunny skies on both coasts. Just delightful weather. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Our cool weather influence continues today. Sunny and brisk by about noontime. North wind at 10 and 65 degrees. High pressure dominates. Fair skies, delightfully cool at sunset, and 66 degrees. Hope you enjoy your day.
Thank you, Bill, for that interview. Now back. No, we got Bill Sherm is the chairman of the Maitland Arts Festival, and this is 14 years for you, right?
This is the 14th one, yes, sir.
Incredible. And how did it all get underway? The Rotary Club, just somebody come up with that idea?
They were looking for a community event and a way to raise funds for our charities, and of course all the funds are donated to the local charities.
How much money do you get? I understand as many as 200,000 people. What kind of money do you get from this?
Oh, we're hoping 20 or 25,000 to give away.
Great. And who gets the money?
We we've got about 14 local charities that we donate the funds to.
And everything volunteer, right?
Everything volunteer.
So
all that we can get.
All the money. Well, I'm available.
We'll need you.
I'll serve those pancakes. Okay, thank you. Bill Sherman, who's chairman of the Maitland Arts Festival. Brian, come on over. I know that you're at a Mickey Mouse operation, but you've worked for one for 10 years, so what's new?
Willard, here in the Sunshine State, the race for governor is being watched by experts nationwide who consider it a good gauge of just how fed up the voters really are. Today's national correspondent Katie Kirk is with us this morning from our bureau in Miami to give us a glimpse of what's up. Good morning, Katie.
Good morning, Brian. In one corner, Democrat Lawton Chiles, a political legend in this state. But in 1988, after 18 years in the U.S. Senate, he shocked his supporters when he announced he would not seek re-election because of burnout and frustration with Capitol Hill. In the other corner, Republican Governor Bob Martinez, who sailed into the State House 4 years ago, but immediately hit some rough seas and at one point was considered politically washed up. Whoever wins this match could be crowned the comeback kid.
Holy Moses, how the years flew. Holy moly, how the kids grew. All the savings that we went through to move to Florida.
An old-timers barbershop quartet and a $5 a plate chicken dinner. Lawton Chiles' recipe for drumming up support.
Will you go out there and win just one more for the Gipper?
An influential old-timer and a barbecue at $1,500 a plate. A political fundraiser a la Bob Martinez. This election is as much a referendum on modern politics as it is a race between two candidates. The Chiles style first emerged when he walked across the Sunshine State while running for the U.S. Senate in 1970. Now Walkin' Lawton is back with his low-key, low-budget brand of populism and some harsh words for politics as usual.
I think you have to run the right way, and that's why we've limited contributions to $100. We're not taking any PAC money. People are more important than money. And if the people want to respond to that, we'll be able to lead.
By taking a small contribution, you're not obligated to do favors for anybody.
It's a people campaign, a common people campaign.
It's less than a month until Election Day, and Lawton Chiles is spending hours talking tangerines with a handful of citrus researchers, talking city government with the mayor of Orlando. Meanwhile, Martinez is all over the map.
Good to see you again.
Good morning.
Providing pictures for local newscasts and outspending his opponent 3-1.
I've been to 67 counties. I have shaken hands in every corner of this state, which he hasn't. He claims now he wants to learn about government. It's a little late, isn't it?
But as governor, Bob Martinez himself has learned some hard lessons.
Bob Martinez, there's no doubt. We are going to vote you out.
His call last year for a special session to restrict abortion in the state was considered a major miscalculation. So was his support for a controversial service tax early in his term. So controversial, he reversed himself.
That mistake has cost me the confidence of the people of Florida.
Still hounded by that flip-flop at a high negative rating, he's decided politics means having to say you're sorry.
I know I've made mistakes. You've told me I've disappointed you sometimes. I've listened and I've learned.
I've never met a politician that hasn't made mistakes, but I've never met one that admitted them. And that's why I did it.
He admitted it, he made a mistake, he changed it, and he went on, and he didn't quit. And Lawton Chiles quit as a senator.
That has some voters worried about the stamina of the Democratic contender.
He dropped out and he says he's a new man, but I think I'd have to take that with a grain of salt.
And while Chiles admits he uses the antidepressant drug Prozac, Martinez hasn't made it an issue. If he does, it may backfire, and he says everyone knows it. Martinez briefly aired this misleading ad attacking Chiles' voting record, but has, for the most part, been running slick, warm, and fuzzy commercials that try to soften his image.
Now we have twin granddaughters.
And portray him as an outsider, not an incumbent, these days a political liability. The strategy seems to be working. 6 months ago, Martinez trailed Chiles by 28 points in the polls. Today, it's too close to call.
Martinez was one of the most unpopular politicians ever, according to the polls. And now he's made a complete turnaround, in part because of his money and in part because of the lassitude of the Democrats.
They just aren't doing enough.
They think they are.
His basic campaign theme is, I'm Lawton Chiles and I'm running for governor. Well, gosh, that's great, Lawton. What you going to do for us? No, you weren't listening. I'm Lawton Chiles and I'm running for governor, and you ought to thank your lucky stars.
Chiles says their differences will become clear in a debate, which he claims Martinez has been dodging.
That's not voiceover. It's not some slick TV. It's a mano mano. You know, we've got an old Florida cracker saying that crackers don't want a dog that won't fight.
And Chiles is beginning to growl. Though he pledged to stay away from negative ads, his latest one attacks his opponent's legacy without naming names. Fair game, Chiles insists. And though he at first felt uncomfortable distinguishing himself as an abortion rights candidate, he's starting to speak out on the issue that could prove pivotal in the race. Even Lawton Chiles has had to make some concessions, but he insists his basic approach will not change, nor will his message.
If it doesn't get across, it's seeds that we're planting, and I feel good about it. They will ripen. They may not ripen by November, but that's all right.
And if they don't ripen by November, that's all right with Bob Martinez, because he will become the first Republican governor ever reelected in the state of Florida. Bryant?
Katie, thanks very much. Have yourself a good weekend, will you?
Thank you.
Coming up on 7:43, up next, an insider's look at the workings of the KGB. We'll get to that in a moment, right after this.
This week in London, there's been a flurry of publicity and some criticism for a controversial new book called KGB, The Inside Story. It's co-authored by Christopher Andrew, a Cambridge University historian, and Oleg Gordievsky, a former KGB agent who for the last 11 years of his career was a double agent for Great Britain. The book once again fuels the British obsession with espionage and the identity of the so-called fifth man, the fifth member of the notorious ring of Cambridge University students recruited by the KGB in the 30s. It adds to the familiar names of Kim Philby, Guy Burgess, Donald MacLean, and Anthony Blunt the new name of John Cairncross, now 76 and living in France and denying all of the allegations. Gordievsky defected in 1985, hasn't been able to see his wife and 2 children since then. They remain in the Soviet Union under strict surveillance, and this morning he's with us from our bureau in London, wearing a disguise to protect his own identity. Good morning, Mr. Gordievsky.
Good morning.
If, in fact, Mr. Cairncross was the fifth man, what did he do that was of any benefit to the Soviet Union?
Oh, he was an extremely helpful agent, cooperating with the Soviet Union between the 30s and the, don't know exactly, 50s, probably. And particularly helpful he was during the Second World War. In that period, in 6 years of the war, he went from one department to another department, from intelligence service to the security service, and then to the SIGINT intelligence service, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and to the Treasury. And also, in the period of time, he was private secretary to one of the ministers. And through that job, he got access to the top secret papers of the members of the Winston Churchill's war cabinet. And all his information was extremely important for the Soviet government.
Yeah. But that was then. Let's talk about now. You say in your book that the Soviet Union came as close to launching a nuclear war with the United States during the 80s as during the Bay of Pigs crisis. What specifically was going on?
In the period between 79 and 84, there was a war hysteria in the Soviet Union. Some people in the Soviet leadership started to believe that the highly ideological conservative administration in the United States,
the Reagan administration,
might have been planning a sudden nuclear attack on the Soviet Union in order to quickly to get rid of the Soviet Union, of communism forever, for good. And they asked the 2 Soviet intelligence services, the KGB and the military, the GRU, to start watching, looking for signs of the preparation to a sudden nuclear attack on the United States.
But the signs they looked at were pretty bizarre. They were counting meetings between the Queen and Mrs. Thatcher, among other things?
Yes, because they were looking for any signs of the possible preparation of the West to a nuclear attack. They were looking for all possible signs, for serious signs, troop movements, military preparations, weapon system being prepared, but also for small signs like activities of the government offices, Prime Minister working until the early morning hours, Prime Minister visiting the Queen, the American ambassador in London visiting the different agencies in London, the windows of intelligence security services on the Ministry of Defense lit through the night, a lot of limousines between the ministries.
It's been 5 years since you were part of the KGB, but I suspect you have some knowledge of what the goings-on today are. A lot of people think with Glasnost there's less KGB activity. Would they be wrong?
No, the KGB activities are still the same, particularly abroad, because they have kept an enormous intelligence apparatus in the United States, in other Western countries, in the whole world. And that apparatus is still intact, providing the Soviet leadership with all kinds of intelligence, military, political, economic, scientific and technological, and also the traditional drive to penetrate the Western intelligence community is still there. Inside the country, the apparatus is also still the same, but it is slightly weakened by the growing criticism of the KGB, by the emerging progressive, liberal and democratic forces in the Soviet Union and liberal media.
Mr. Gordovievsky, I wish we had more time and maybe we can invite you back another morning, but I'm afraid that will have to be all of our conversation this morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Very interesting. And we'll be back with much more 10 minutes before the hour. Back after this.
In two of the most sensational trials of recent years, Klaus von Bülow was accused of injecting his wealthy and socially prominent wife into a coma and vegetative state from which she will never awaken. The behind-the-scenes drama of that second trial has been made into a new motion picture called Reversal of Fortune, in which Jeremy Irons portrays von Bülow. Good morning. I always have a tendency to call you Mr. von Bülow, because in this movie, you are so like what I think he must have been and is like. You meet the man?
No, I never did.
No?
I never did. I decided that would be, it would stultify my imagination if I actually met him.
One of the interesting things about this is that it's a courtroom drama, but very little takes place in the courtroom. You really get behind the scenes and find out how a lawyer runs a trial and how he gets the evidence and how he figures out what he's going to do. That's very, very unusual. Also, what's interesting about this movie is the relationship between you and the lawyer, who is really based on a Harvard professor named Alan Dershowitz. In fact, the movie is based on his book, right?
Correct. The book's called The Reversal of Fortune. And Alan Dershowitz and Klaus von Bülow were two totally different people. I mean, a real New York boy, Alan Dershowitz, and Klaus, who was Danish by extraction, I think is perceived as being English. In fact, he's not English, but two opposite poles, chalk and cheese.
I looked at her upper lip. She had blood on it. I thought she'd broken a tooth. That was the extent of my concern. And that's really all I can... That's really all I can say.
Yeah, but is it the truth?
Of course.
But not the whole truth.
I don't know the whole truth. I don't know what happened to her.
Wish I didn't believe you. You know, it's very hard to trust someone you don't understand. You're a very strange man.
You have no idea.
Ron Silver plays Alan Dershowitz, the Harvard law professor who was a lawyer and a professor and who took the case. And he even looks like Dershowitz in this movie, to me, Ron Silver does. And of course, we must mention Glenn Close. And if I were Glenn Close and somebody said, you want to play Mrs. von Bülow, and said, what do I do, just lie down and close my eyes for 2 hours? But there are flashbacks so that although she is now in a coma, in a vegetative state, there are a lot of scenes with you and Glenn Close.
It's my lovely mother, isn't it? She's behind all this. She's in cahoots with Maria. Well, just because she had all the money before I had all the money does not mean she's my lord and master.
Of course not. I am your lord and master. Just kidding.
Everybody in this case is alive. Von Bülow's alive, his children, who were instrumental in getting him indicted. Whose permission did you need? Can you show living people in a movie in a good or bad light as you see fit?
I believe that the fact that the book has been published and has not been, there's been no litigation against the book, means that it's safe. I mean, I believe the lawyers know that we can therefore make the film of that book. But we had to be very careful. I mean, there was no artistic license really allowed when we were making it. We had to, everything was checked, every line was checked. And I was very concerned playing Von Bülow that I mean, I hope what I play is interesting, but I didn't want to add to his difficulties of living. He'd been through it once.
Well, he has a girlfriend in this movie who, as portrayed on screen, is certainly one of the most insufferable women I've ever met in my life. And she's alive. You may hear from her.
Yeah, but she's remarried, and I think she's living in London or somewhere. She's, I think, hopefully all right. Christine Baranski, is she wonderful?
It's a wonderful performance. Is it unfair of me to ask you what you think about the guilt or innocence of Mr. Von Bülow?
No, you can ask anything.
Well, will you answer anything?
Oh, I wouldn't tell you.
Well, that was very interesting.
Because Klaus wouldn't tell you. I mean, I know. You have to know whether you're guilty or innocent if you're playing a character. And I came to a very strong conclusion. But just as Klaus would never tell me if I asked him, which is why I didn't, I don't think I would ever tell you.
In which case,
point is he got off. And what is guilt?
I don't know. It's that gold stuff you paint on buildings. Reversal of Fortune is a detective story, a courtroom drama, and a thriller all in one.
And there's a little comedy there, Gene.
There's a little comedy there. And it's the end of the interview. Trying to stretch it, trying to pad your role here.
Well, I just thought I might.
Jeremy Irons, thank you very much for being with us here on Today.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back after this.
Thanks, Gene. The following message is brought to you by IBM. Whatever your size, whatever your needs, IBM is working to bring you the best solutions.
We're back in the Magic Kingdom after a station break. 18th morning of October of '90, and straight ahead in this hour, we'll take a visit to the Florida that few tourists ever see, the Panhandle, and some thoughts on how life there shows how life in the Deep South may be changing. Back for a second hour of Today, and back in the Magic Kingdom, back in the land of Disney World, here in the heart of Florida, where we're joined by a few friends back here who are part of the expansion and growth of the Disney empire. In just a short time, this will be Monsieur de la Goofy and Mickey and Pluto, because they're going to be part of Euro Disneyland. It's in the process of being built right now. We're going to take a preview of what that's going to look like in this half hour, in our next half hour, rather, when Dennis Murphy joins us. But right now, let's get back to Studio 3B in New York. Deborah?
All right, can I tell another real reason that you're down there besides to see those three guys? This weekend is the Bryant Gumbel Walt Disney World Pro-Am Golf Tournament. It benefits United Negro College Fund. Last year they raised about $250,000, and this year you're going to be raising money again, huh? About the same, yeah. We've got some good people coming down to be a part of it. Tom Brokaw is going to be playing, Joe DiMaggio, Dr. J, John Havlicek, Arthur Ashe, B.J. Thomas, Eddie Marinero, Frank Viola. We got a lot of good people who are helping us out here, and some of the PGA pros too. We're looking forward to it. And when you implement a putt-putt routine to this pro-am, I'll even come and play. Come on. It's easy. There'll be a lot of people down here embarrassing themselves, Deborah, including yours truly. So you'll be in good company. I don't think that's the case. Bryant, thanks. In just a few minutes, we'll also be meeting somebody else who knows a little bit about working with magic and enchanting children, the family of the late Jim Henson, who did more than his share of enchanting kids around the world. We'll be talking with his wife and his daughter about a pretty special evening they had in Chicago last night. And we'll also be meeting some of the new players on Saturday Night Live. Chris Rock and Chris Farley are a couple of the new guys that you'll be seeing this year. Right? Thanks, Deb. We'll also profile Elizabeth Perkins. She's an actress currently being seen in Avalon and getting rave reviews, too. At 8:01, let's get to the news. Faith Daniels has that. Faith?
Thanks, Bryant. Hello again, everyone. Although President Bush has softened his threat to shut the government down tonight, congressional negotiators still hope to reconcile differences between House and Senate budget plans by midnight. The Senate passed its plan this morning, with a majority of both parties supporting it. It calls for more taxes on gasoline, tobacco, and alcohol, and less spending on social programs such as Medicare. Unlike the House version, the Senate plan does not increase income taxes on the rich. President Bush had threatened to shut the government down at midnight tonight, but last night the White House softened that threat, saying the president would sign an emergency spending bill if he thought satisfactory progress was being made on the budget. Motorists gathered in long lines at gas stations in Iraq today after the government announced that gas and oil rationing will start next week. Iraq doesn't have the materials it needs to refine oil into gas. It's the first clear sign that the United Nations economic embargo is working. The Persian Gulf crisis is drawing up a lot of household budgets in this country, with sharp increases in gasoline and heating oil prices. But for the oil companies on the receiving end, it's a gusher. Chief Financial Correspondent Mike Jensen reports.
A lot of industries have been having profit problems, but not the oil companies. They're doing terrifically, especially those with lots of oil wells of their own. Since the beginning of the Persian Gulf crisis, crude oil prices have almost doubled. So analysts say the big oil companies will report an average profit increase of about 7% for July, August, and September. Some may be up as much as 25%.
That is their mission in life, to make as much money as they possibly can at the cost of the people.
Huge profits also are being racked up by governments that export oil. Saudi Arabia is making an extra $170 million a day. That's $62 billion a year.
I don't think Saudi Arabia should profit off of us sending soldiers.
And it's not just the Saudis. Great Britain and the Soviet Union also export a lot of crude oil, so they're getting windfall profits too. Consumers are the losers. With inflation rising, they'll pay more for all sorts of products. A lot more, unless there's peace in the Persian Gulf, and soon. Mike Jensen, NBC News, New York.
It was another victory for Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev this morning when the Soviet parliament gave tentative agreement to his plan to change the Soviet economy to a free market system. Gorbachev's chief rival, Boris Yeltsin, blasted Gorbachev's plan, calling it a catastrophe doomed to fail. Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney has been in Moscow this week, and as Jim Masada reports, the secretary has been impressed by the Soviets' new openness.
After his 4-day look at the Soviet military in action, Cheney admitted his fears of the former enemy were easing.
That while I did in fact begin as a skeptic, based on past experience, I have been persuaded by the events of the last 18 months that indeed we've entered a new era of U.S.-Soviet relations.
In a rare show of openness, the Soviets displayed their crack airborne troops in action. But the message was clear. We are no longer adversaries.
The enemy image is being diluted and increasingly undermined in both countries.
Viewing the tanks and weaponry of what used to be the evil empire, Cheney said he was impressed by General Yazov's leadership.
I think I would prefer to have him in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Cheney also liked what he heard about Soviet military budget cuts, some $10 billion of cutbacks in the next budget.
Now, as you go through the process,
Cheney gave the Soviets details of U.S. long-term cuts in defense spending, too. Cheney praised U.S.-Soviet cooperation in the Gulf, but backed off from speculating about Soviet troops one day joining Americans in battle there. Jim Masada, NBC News, Moscow.
After a month behind bars, Charles Keating is a free man this morning. The leading figure in the most costly savings and loan failure was freed Thursday when a U.S. judge reduced his bond from $5 million to $300,000. Keating, who ran the now defunct Lincoln Savings and Loan, was jailed on charges of fraudulently selling junk bonds. Residents of eastern Canada were rattled a bit this morning when a moderate earthquake shook Montreal and the nearby area. Canadian officials measured the quake at 5.2 on the Richter scale. No serious damage or injuries reported, but I'm sure it got everyone's attention there. It's coming up on 8:07 now. Time to get Brian's attention in Florida.
Okay, Faith, thanks. You've had it all along. Don't worry about it. Not like I just jumped up and decided to say hello. Anyway, let's swing it on down to another section of Florida now. Willard tells us he's in Maitland for a check of the weather. Willard.
I'm only 23 miles from you. That's right. We're in the best little town in the great state of Florida, as the crow flies.
Which direction from Orlando? I mean, from Magic Kingdom?
Which direction away from the Magic Kingdom? It's right over there.
Oh, they're north of us? Oh,
yeah,
okay.
You're south of us,
there.
as we say.
Oh,
Hey,
you're there.
Thousands of people are asking, where's Joe Garagiola this morning?
Joe is back home resting in Arizona, but he may be on his way, I think, towards the World Series up in Oakland.
I think that's what they had in mind. Well, I just wanted Joe to know his thousands of fans are here. And, of course, the Rotary Club, 14 years, they've had this fabulous arts festival in Maitland. 200,000 people show up. All the money goes to charity. Some of the local schools, high school, middle school, elementary schools, they have a weather theme for their murals. Take a look at this. Here at one quick pan, as we say. Maybe you can see some of these. Hold those up, gang, and say hello to your friends and fans out in television land. Aren't they? Isn't that lovely? I really am sorry we don't have time to zoom in and show you, because they are outstanding. And I'm not just whistling Dixie, as we say. They are outstanding. Okay, let's check a birthday wish this morning, how sweet it is. We've got some birthday buddies who are watching us. Anna Kazmierski of Holyoke, Mass. is 105 years old. Very attractive lady. Happy birthday to you. Ellen Cooper of Kellyville, Oklahoma. Look at that smile. Looks like my grandmother a little bit. She's from Kellyville, Oklahoma, 108 and fun to be around. Everybody loves her to death. They had all sorts of weather, as you know, back in the east yesterday, but we do have a hurricane watch out. I'm not going to go out on too much of a limb on this one, but I'll tell you, that front is so strong, and you see how it's sweeping out into the Atlantic. Nana is a minimal hurricane, about 72-mile-an-hour winds, and there is a hurricane watch in Bermuda, and there could be some, obviously, heavy rain and some strong winds, but I think Nana will, with a little luck, dissipate. Famous last words, right? But still keep a weather eye. Snow in the central Rockies today and the northern Rockies, and rain throughout a lot of the western states, but the coast is clear. So come on back to Daddy. Cool temperatures in the Great Lakes area. This morning, the wind is very strong in the northeast and mid-Atlantic. After that storm system, wind chill in New York is 31 degrees today. Here's what's happening in your world even as we speak.
Our cool weather influence continues today. Sunny and brisk by about noontime. North wind at 10 and 65 degrees. High pressure dominates. Fair skies, delightfully cool at sunset, and 66 degrees. Hope you enjoy your day.
Here's a beautiful T-shirt. This from Palm Springs, California. The Desert Tour 1990 golf tournament gets underway. The Desert AIDS Project. The money goes for, of course, the AIDS Foundation. Palm Springs, California, this weekend. Okay, looking south, brother. Hallelujah. I see the mimosa tree over there, a little Spanish moss, and a 7-Eleven. Now back
All right,
to you.
Miller. Exactly 23 miles. Thanks very much. We come back, we'll head north, real north, up to the Florida Panhandle and take a tour after a break. This is Today on NBC. On After 8 this morning, the other Florida. When tourists fly into Orlando or Miami, as they do in droves these days, some would say they are missing the real Florida, that part that is the state's panhandle. It's that outback region that's often bypassed by the millions who visit this state. So we went north, looking for their real Florida. There actually is a Swanee River, drifting slowly southwest towards the Gulf of Mexico. Its waters are the color of sun tea. In a sense, the Swanee divides Florida. To the south and east and whirls apart are Orlando and Miami. To the north and west, a very different Florida, with places named Sopchoppy, Redhead, Greenhead, and Panacea. In such places as these, the Old South, the rural South, or what little remains of it, can still be experienced. Up in Florida's Panhandle, locals cruise down from Alabama and Georgia to bathe in the warm Gulf waters. Where the sea oats and the dunes end is where the action begins, in that area that the locals call their Riviera.
That's his money, whoever bought it and put it up there.
Harry Cruz, who teaches at the University of Gainesville, has written 16 novels set in the rural South. His fictional characters are often torn by the kinds of conflicts common to those who've been raised on grits in cracker country.
Were they better for it? God knows anybody that says deprivation, ignorance, hunger, the kind of clannishness that is forever drawing blood, is somehow character building or ennobling. Anybody said that, I would take as a fool. They were better in many respects. They always carried with them the home place. They always carried with them in the ear the dialect of their family, the idiom. Or once upon a time was. Now children, instead of learning the language at their granddaddy's knee, instead of learning the language there, the children here in the South and everywhere else, but I'm speaking about the South, where I come from. I reckon that we'll all end up talking like radio announcers.
And after dinner, head to the Back Door Saloon and get ready to crank it up. With some
Outside money, developers they are called. But what they've done is they bulldozed down an enormous square of land. They are scattered all over the state in just the weirdest, strangest places, and they're all called retirement communities. Bulldoze down all them damn trees and plant a lawn. Curious violence to the language to call those people developers.
It's still possible to escape mass developers in some areas of northern Florida. Seaside towns like Apalachicola seem to have changed very little. Oystermen still work the tongs, bringing up a small and tasty variety. Also in Apalachicola, there's the grave of a country doctor who dreamed up an invention 150 years ago that would radically change the world, and especially Florida. Dr. John Corey wanted to make ice to help his yellow fever victims. Ironically, his invention, mechanical refrigeration, would, a century later, be a major force in changing life in Florida. Refrigeration helped make the mall and the high-rise possible. Refrigeration brought the city to the country. Within one generation, the world changed, and so too, the worldview of the Southerner. Still, Harry Cruz's mother is a little uncertain about that new order.
Oh, man. I called her on the phone and I said, Ma, God bless us all. Guess what? I sold a novel. She never had understood what I was doing. I had told her, and she said, you mean one of them stories that you make up? And I said, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I sold it. I sold my first novel. And she said, in the most serious voice, she said, son, you didn't pass it off as a truth, did you? And I said, no, ma'am. No. They know. She said, you mean they know you made it up and they bought it? Paid? And I said, yes, ma'am. And so here's the line that I love the line, too. She said, well, I'll never understand that as long as I live. They've taken and given you good money for something they've known to be a lie.
And they are still taking and giving that good money to Harry Cruz for his stories. His latest novel is called Body. It hits the bookstores. Well, it did hit the bookstores last month. Coming up in just a moment, a Chicago tribute to the late Jim Henson. First, we'll take a break. On a Friday morning, heading towards a great weekend in October, this is Today on NBC.
It's been 5 months since the sudden death of Muppet creator Jim Henson. His creativity, his devotion to children, all were very special. And his passing left children of all ages with a deep sense of loss. Sesame Street vaulted Henson into prominence, and in the process, Jim Henson charmed and educated a generation of kids. Its philosophy about TV was quite simple.
Shows that I want to see. I'm hoping other people like to see them too.
And the shows caught on, thanks to Kermit the Frog's alter ego. Jim Henson was remembered fondly last night in Chicago. The Ronald McDonald Children's Charities honored him for his work with children. A check for $100,000 was presented to Henson's family so that his work could continue. This morning, Jim Henson's wife, Jane, and their daughter, Cheryl, are with us from our NBC News Bureau in Chicago. Good morning and congratulations. Good morning.
Good morning.
Jane, let me ask you, how will this money be put forward?
Well, this is a challenge that we haven't really had before, to have an amount of money like this to use for children's charities, and it will be in line with the work that Jim has done, hopefully with creativity and puppetry, hopefully, for children.
I wonder how he would regard all the many accolades that have come to him posthumously. He was a sort of modest man.
Well, it really has been a surprise to all of us that it's been quite this big. But I'm sure he would have loved it very much, except that I think that he, would wish it would be more fun than sad.
Yeah, Cheryl, your father's been remembered so much for all of his work and his devotion and his childlike enthusiasm about what he did. What was he like as a dad?
He was a wonderful father. There are 5 kids in my family, and I'm the second oldest, and we all worked a lot with him, and we really loved working with him, and he's a fantastic dad. He's really great.
You've continued in the family footsteps. We had Brian on, I guess, a couple of 3 weeks ago talking about the movie he worked with, Witches. Does it make it easier being part of the puppetry movement to get over the loss?
The creative family that we work with is fantastic. The people that my father gathered around him, he cared for so much, and they just have given back so much love and so much caring. And so, yes, I think that being part of a creative community has really helped this period of time. So it wouldn't be the same without everybody that he worked with.
Yeah, and I know that all of the fans of your father and Jane, your husband's work, take a lot of solace in the fact that Muppeteering will continue. Just before Jim passed away, he was with us on the program talking about the deal with Disney. What's the status of that now? Because I know all the papers hadn't been finally signed. Will it go through?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. They're working on it a lot in Disney World now, and everybody's looking forward to it very much. And I'm sure that the idea that Jim and Walt Disney both would have loved to have had their work shown together. But I know the sons and the daughters have been working very hard toward getting the companies together and getting it to work and go forward. But when it's all together, it will be very fun, especially down there in Orlando.
Yeah, we really look forward to all the projects that we've got in the works and that we're planning on doing together. So we hope.
Fingers crossed. All of our fingers are crossed. Jane, I want to ask you a little bit about times past. You guys got started on our station down in Washington, and I won't say how many years ago it was, but that was back when Willard was an announcer down there. Tell us a little bit about the first days.
Well, Willard and Eddie Walker were coming out of American University at the same time that we were coming out of Maryland University, and we started on WRC, and Willard was one of the first people on our show. We had 5 minutes of some wonderful people down there gave us 5 silly minutes before the Huntley Brinkley show and 5 silly minutes before Steve Allen, and those were marvelous audiences to have.
Thank you for being with us. Lots of luck. Back after this.
Okay.
Thanks.
Back now, 8:30 on a Friday morning in the Magic Kingdom of Disney World in Florida. Part of the magic of the Disney outfit is that the message they deliver works without translation. Mickey Mouse is Mickey Mouse in all languages. The magic works just as well here in Florida as it does in Anaheim and as it already does in Japan and as it figures to in France come 1992. That's where the newest Magic Kingdom is going up. It's Euro Disneyland. We're going to take a visit there in this half hour. But once more, let's swing back to the Big Apple up in Manhattan. Deborah standing by in Studio 3B. Deb?
All right, Brian, thanks. Also coming up this morning, we're going to meet a couple of the new guys that you're seeing on Saturday Night Live this year. 2 Chris's, Chris Rock and Chris Farley. We'll be talking with them in a few minutes. And Jim Brown will be talking with Elizabeth Perkins. She co-stars in the new movie that's getting all sorts of good reviews, Avalon. Movie opens nationwide today. First, though, one more check of the news for the week. Faith Daniels has got that. Faith?
Thanks, Deborah. Washington is racing against another budget deadline with a stopgap spending bill ready to expire at midnight. The Senate worked into the morning, finally reaching agreement on a deficit-cutting package. Capitol Hill bargainers will now go to work on the Senate plan and a very different House version. But congressional leaders think they can have the legislation ready for President Bush to sign by tonight. Mikhail Gorbachev is having better luck than George Bush getting lawmakers to agree to his economic plans. In a spirited speech to the Supreme Soviet, Gorbachev accused his chief rival of shirking responsibility for the USSR's change to a free market system. Russian President Boris Yeltsin has blasted Gorbachev's program as a catastrophe that will lead to inflation and unemployment. Lawmakers then gave Gorbachev's reform plans preliminary approval and began debating possible amendments. Gorbachev's expert on the Persian Gulf crisis calls on President Bush today after a long meeting with Secretary of State Baker on Thursday. Yevgeny Primakov is trying to discourage military action against Iraq and he may be carrying a peace proposal from Iraqi President Saddam Hussein. Hussein has ordered the rationing of gasoline and motor oil. The rationing does not take effect until next Tuesday, but long lines developed at gas stations today when the announcement was made. It's the first clear sign that the UN trade embargo is starting to hit Iraq's economy. Former Savings and Loan Chief Charles Keating is a free man this morning. After more than a month in a Los Angeles jail, Keating was released on bond and went home to prepare his defense against criminal fraud charges. His bond had been set at $5 million, but a judge ruled that was too high and reduced it to $300,000. Work crews will be busy today cleaning up the mess left behind from a line of powerful East Coast storms. A tornado touched down in suburban Baltimore, tearing rooftops from houses and uprooting trees. Another twister slashed through a Virginia community near Washington, D.C., leaving several buildings near collapse. One man in Virginia was killed when a tornado struck his barn. An earthquake rumbled through eastern Canada early this morning. Officials say it measured 5.2 on the Richter scale. There's no report of injury or damage, but it certainly woke a lot of people up. Finally, FBI agents in Rochester, New York didn't have to wait long to tell the local police chief about an arrest they made on Thursday. Chief Gordon Ehrlicher was the man they arrested. Ehrlicher was due in federal court this morning, charged with embezzling at least $58,000. It's now 8:33. Time for Willa's weather.
This morning's weather is brought to you by Dimetap. For allergy relief, Dimetap is the best advice you can take.
Hey, don't need that this morning down here because the air is crystal clear in Maitland, Florida. The Rotary Club, this is their 14th annual, 14th, that's a combination between 13 and 14th annual Maitland Arts and Crafts Festival. And the Michelin Puppets are going to perform for you in just a few minutes. Executive Secretary Tracy Spangler, good morning.
Good morning.
And you are a nonprofit organization, right?
Yes, we are, and we're sponsored by the Maitland Rotary Club.
So it's not the money. They make quite a bit of money out of this festival. See, 200,000 people show up. It started out 14 years ago, just a little thing, but now it's got terrific support, and they give money to various organizations. So what do you do with your puppets?
We do a disability awareness program, and we tour 14 counties in Florida, teaching children to be understanding of people with differences.
And you studied theater, and you're puppeteers, and they same thing.
Yes.
Well, we're going to watch you perform in just a minute. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to have you on with us, Tracy. Let's check a birthday this morning. This is sweet. Harry Schulcraft of West Palm Beach, right across, not far from here, 107 years old. We're trying to get a high-speed train in Florida. I think it's on the board right now. That thing's going to be a 200-mile-an-hour job, but Harry can be here in 30 seconds. Anna Althoff of Irving, Texas, is 100 years old. The men are still crazy about her. How about that? Hang in there. Couple of little weather stories for the weekend. Look for some scattered showers throughout the nation's midsection. Much colder air moving into the northern Rockies and the central Rocky Range. Also beautiful on both coasts today. Holy Toledo, Uncle Jack. Look at the rain Sunday moving into the northeast coast and the eastern Great Lakes and down through the Mississippi and the Tennessee Valley. Local. Here's what's happening in your today.
Our cool weather influence continues today. Sunny and brisk by about noontime. North wind at 10 and 65 degrees. High pressure dominates. Fair skies, delightfully cool at sunset and 66 degrees. Hope you enjoy your day.
And to close out our part of the program here from Maitland, Florida. As I say, Orlando is a suburb of Maitland, and the Disney World's right over the corner. The Michelin Puppets are going to perform for you, for the Rotary Club, and for the Arts and Crafts Festival. Come see us. You'll love it. Michelin Puppets.
Grandma, did he win?
Yeah,
did he win? Yes, he won the race, which just goes to show you that though you may be slow or have a disability, you can still succeed. Yay!
Thank you, sir.
Live from New York. It's Saturday night, and the new guys on the show, Chris Rock and Chris Farley, are following the tradition of folks like Murphy, Aykroyd, Curtin, and Carvey. They're part of the ensemble, which makes up one of the most popular programs in late-night television. Okay, Chris Rock and Chris Farley, how neat was it the first time you saw those opening credits on SNL?
It goes through you. It's a big ego thing. I watch it twice.
Does it still? Does it still? I mean, the show's been on, what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks now?
Yeah, 3 weeks.
Does it still give you the...
I stopped everything. I'm like, okay, wait, just stop the makeup. Let me just look at this credit.
Neat. How'd you guys get the job?
Lauren's good friends with my mother. No.
It's been a lot of money.
No, we did auditions and auditions and auditions and payday. You get it.
You just heard that they were opening up the cast and you came down for just a cold call? Or
They kind of find you.
How'd they find you?
Well, I'm a stand-up. So they saw me do stand-up and watched me work.
Yeah.
And now I'm on the show.
And you're a New Yorker anyway. You live in Brooklyn.
Bed-Stuy.
Yeah, but you're from Chicago, and they found you at Second City, was it?
Yes.
What happened?
Well, they sent some people came out and saw me, and then Lauren flew me out, and then he came by a couple months later and hired me.
He came by and watched your act at
Yes, he came and saw the show at Second City in Chicago.
Did you know that he was in the audience?
Yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't like he just happened in.
No, well, I knew he was in the audience.
Did that put extra heavy-duty pressure on you?
Yeah, we all knew he was in the audience.
So everybody was sort of auditioning. It wasn't just you, even though he'd specifically come to see you. I'm sure everybody else is kind of like, oh, I guess it's my big chance.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the characters that you have this year on the program. Being the new guys on the block, do you get the chance to develop a role like some of the ones that have become classics over the years?
Oh, I guess we get a shot. Yeah, we get a shot at a lot of things. It just, you never know what's going to be on the show until 11 o'clock on Saturday. So it's really hard to say, yeah, I'm going to do this next week. And then people, hey, what happened to the, and it's not there.
And you don't find out until you come in for the show rundown meeting?
We have a dress rehearsal, then we have the show.
Mm-hmm.
The dress rehearsal's 2 hours, and the show's only an hour and a half, so they're going to cut things from dress to show, and you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Do you get a chance to work with the writers and say, hey, I'd really like to develop something like this, or at this stage of the game?
Yeah, we work with the writers, and
like what kind of character would you love to do? I mean, it's only 3 weeks into the season, so you got more shows ahead of you than you got behind you.
Yeah.
You got any druthers?
Well, I don't know. Second City had some, characters I did, but I'm looking to get new ones. Fiddler, the Monkey Boy, the Goldfish.
What's the Goldfish?
I don't know.
You just made that one up.
No, yeah, just look for new characters.
You got any favorites from your stand-up routine or lines that you'd like to try to develop?
I can't really say. They'll be on Living Color next week if I do it. No. I'd say something.
Well, it might be on SNL if you say it too,
Hey. Boy, where's Brian Gumbel?
He's in Florida. He's talking to Mickey
Mouse. The first black man in the history of history to have a golf tournament. Ever.
You want to play?
Yeah, I want to learn.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll talk to him.
Okay.
All right. Chris Rock, lots of luck to you. Chris Farley, good luck to you too. We'll see you guys Saturday night. And in just a moment, we'll be heading back down to Disney World, talking about another Disneyland in the works. This one's in Europe. Back after this.
Mickey! Mickey? Il soigne!
Our pals here may call Florida home, but they are considerable travelers. They've spent some time in Anaheim. They have already been over to the Disneyland in Tokyo, and now they're getting their passports ready, as you can see, because there's a new Euro Disneyland going up. One's coming to life just outside of Paris, as today's foreign editor Dennis Murphy reports.
Hi-ho, hi-ho, it's off to work we go.
Maybe the Seven Dwarfs can do it, but the hard hats here don't have time to whistle while they work. They're too busy turning 5,000 acres of French fields into the hills and rivers of Euro Disneyland.
I think it's going to be the fun of discovering the familiar in a different climate, a different environment, and one that's a microcosm of Europe.
Don't try to tell the French that Mickey is American, because they have grown up with him too.
Mickey! Mickey? Il soigne!
They call them Mickey Mouse instead of Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck instead of Donald Duck, and I have to correct them at every lesson. But they know all about them.
So it was probably just a matter of time till Disney sprouted another theme park here. And here we are in the Kingdom Magique. You all recognize Main Street, USA. The quaint turn-of-the-century shops looks just like Orlando. And down here at the end of the boulevard is a fabulous Sleeping Beauty's castle. Well, use your imagination and come back in about a year and a half.
When you
Then it will look like this, the most fanciful of all Disney castles in the midst of a $3 billion park. All the familiar rides, resort hotels, fast trains hauling in visitors from a marketplace of 320 million people. Only the tunnel under the English Channel is a bigger construction project, and as they build a little replica of America, they find bits of the old world.
Oh, things like graveyards that go back to the Middle Ages and before, back to the Roman Empire, pottery, various artifacts, swords, rifles from world wars, those kinds of things. All carefully preserved and taken away.
But isn't it a little bit funny to be building new castles in a region that has no shortage of the real thing? The Disney people answer they're only coming home to the source of founder Walt's inspiration.
The literal men are not here?
No, they're not.
Snow White, German.
The gift of life is thine.
Pinocchio's a nice Italian boy.
When there's a smile in your heart, there's no...
And Peter Pan flew out of London. Good Europeans all.
So what we're doing is, in a sense, bringing back to France, in the identity, the classic identity that Walt Disney has given, those wonderful classic characters.
A young French woman who works for Disney puts it this way.
It's like a dream. A wonderful dream come true.
DJ, go, oh, DJ, go, oh.
But it hasn't all come together like bibbidi-bobbidi-boo. Mickey, Donald, and the chairman of the company were pelted with eggs and flour bombs by young leftist demonstrators the day they promoted the stock issue. And in the village nearest the theme park, the farmers who grow sugar beets grumble about losing their quiet way of life. Trucks in and out of Disneyland rumble through streets laid out in the 12th century. The real estate man, though, is pleased.
Disneyland is a very good thing for the region. Very good thing.
But there are skeptics with doubts about being virtually annexed by a magic kingdom. It's not that the French are as grumpy as their reputation. It's that they've never been seduced by a mouse before, and such an American one at that.
I think this is America, yes, definitely, and we're pleased about that, but America in its sort of mythical, innocent, exuberant storytelling best.
Disney expects 11 million visitors here the first year, proving once again that for Mickey Mouse, it's a pretty big world after all. For today, Dennis Murphy, NBC News, Euro Disneyland, France.
We're coming up on 8:48, so I got to tell my pals here so long because they've got to get to the opening of the park, 9 o'clock. Mickey, Goofy, Monsieur de la Pluto. See ya. We're going to come back in just a moment. First, let's go to New York. Joe Whitty. Joe?
Thanks, Brian. Here's a message brought to you by mountain-grown Folgers coffee. Folgers, the best part of waking up.
New movie Avalon opens nationwide today. It has been highly praised by critics in its limited release. And our man in Hollywood, Jim Brown, says that one of the reasons it works so well is a young actress named Elizabeth Perkins.
Honey, don't count. Just...
I'm doing good, honey.
You're doing wonderful.
Thank you.
Writer-director Barry Levinson put together an ensemble cast for his latest movie, Avalon, including actors Elizabeth Perkins and Aidan Quinn. Their characters are based on Levinson's own mother and father and the immigrant struggle, and growing up in a Baltimore that is now only a memory.
What?
I'm pregnant.
You what?
I'm pregnant. I'm pregnant.
You're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding.
You have great news like that? You wait until now to tell me? This is incredible.
I would have told you sooner, but the streetcar discussion got in the way. I mean, it didn't seem like the proper time for me to try to get in the fact that I was pregnant again.
I am second generation Greek. My grandparents immigrated through Ellis Island and through Philadelphia in the 20s. So I can relate to the immigrant struggle, you know, from that point of view. But in terms of a large family, no. My sisters and my mother and my father are all over the country. We're on different sides. We're everywhere. Barry has an incredible way of pulling you into his story or pulling you into the memory of his family and making you feel a true part of it.
Perkins, who is perhaps best known for her role opposite Tom Hanks in the comedy hit Big, says Avalon is the first time she has ever been involved in an ensemble cast movie. And she recalled her first meeting with Joan Plowright, who plays her mother-in-law. Plowright is one of Britain's foremost actresses and the widow of Laurence Olivier.
She finally walks in. I said, "Oh, Miss Plower, it's such a pleasure and an honor to be working with you. It's so very wonderful to meet you." And she just looked at me and said, "Oh, well, we're not going to start with this now, are we?" And from that moment on, whatever fear or, whatever armor I'd sort of put on myself to suit myself to work with this, incredible actress was just taken right down, and it was just, let's just get in the trenches and act.
When Elizabeth Perkins finished shooting her scenes for Avalon, she moved on to her next movie called He Said, She Said, and came right back to Baltimore to shoot that film.
Every street corner has a Barry Levinson memory, and every time you walk down that street, you remember that memory. There were some places that we actually doubled up shooting on. I mean, I'd pull up to location, I go, "No, we're not. We're not shooting here. We can't be." But yeah, it was very hard for me to let go of him in Avalon when I was there again. Very hard.
Avalon, with Elizabeth Perkins and an ensemble cast, opens nationwide today. For today, Jim Brown, NBC News, Hollywood.
And we'll be back with some final thoughts for the week right after this.
As we get set to close down shop for this October Friday, let us go back to New York once again, where I'm sure Deborah and Faith want to join in wishing Jacoba Atlas all the best.
Yeah. Kobe's leaving us. She's going to be a big-time producer in California.
Kobe, you teary-eyed back there? What's going on? There's a look at Jacoba, now an author. She's heading off to work with Gary David Goldberg. A good production. We wish her all the best. Okay?
Absolutely.
Hey, guys, have a great weekend, will you?
You
Take
too.
care of yourselves.
You too. Hit well.
Thanks very much. Here in Orlando, the darkness of dawn has given way to a brilliant sunshine. In just a few moments, the rope that stretches across Main Street, USA, is going to drop, and thousands of families will pour into the Magic Kingdom for another day of thrills and excitement. It's a day here requiring good walking shoes, plenty of film or videotape, and a great imagination.
Okay, haunted house. Yeah, where is it?
The Hines family of New Jersey is well prepared. They've been planning their trip to Orlando for more than a year and a half. 9-year-old Johnny, 5-year-old Chaz, determined to take everything in. So as we leave you on this Friday, we will walk along with them and enjoy some of the sights and sounds of the place that Disney built. Have a great weekend.
Good boy. It's a fig tree? Yeah, sure. Plastic. Having fun?
There's so much that we share, and it's time we're away.